I get it, when you scroll through endless laptop listings you start to wonder if any of them actually live up to the hype. So many machines look glossy on the page, only to feel like a paperweight or a constant overheating nightmare once you fire them up for a real gaming session. That hesitation is real, and it's why I wanted to dig a little deeper before I hit buy. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The MSI Thin 15 RTX 4050 packs a 13th Gen Intel Core i7-13620H and an Ada Lovelace RTX 4050 into a chassis that's meant to look like a high-end ultrabook rather than a bulky gaming rig. At first glance you might wonder, can a laptop that thin really handle modern AAA titles without turning my desk into a steam bath? I spent a weekend swapping it between my coffee shop desk, a cramped dorm room, and a small living room TV setup to see how the promise holds up when the stakes are real. First off, the chassis. The Cosmos Gray aluminum alloy feels premium, and the thin bezel 15.6-inch FHD panel is a joy to look at. The 144Hz refresh rate isn't just a marketing number. When I tossed Elden Ring into the mix at 1080p, the motion felt buttery smooth, especially with the adaptive sync kicking in during fast-paced combat. The blue backlit keyboard is subtle but useful in low-light gaming marathons, and the layout feels ergonomic enough that my wrists didn't ache after 3 hours of play. Now, the cooling. MSI touts a low-noise cooler boost system, and that claim mostly holds up. In the coffee shop, the fan spun up just enough to keep the laptop around 80 degrees under sustained load, and the acoustic footprint was comparable to a quiet office fan. In a closed bedroom, though, the fans became audible after about 45 minutes of continuous high-settings play. If you need absolute silence for streaming commentary, you might want to keep the graphics settings a notch lower or invest in an external cooling pad. Battery life is another real-world concern. The Thin 15 has a 53Wh cell, which feels generous on paper, but when you push the RTX 4050 to 70W for Cyberpunk 2077 you get roughly 2 hours of gameplay before the charger becomes a permanent fixture. That's fine if you plan to plug in at a desk, but for truly portable gaming sessions think a train ride or a park bench. The laptop leans more toward plug-in first. On lighter titles like Valorant or indie games, the battery stretches to about 5 hours, which is respectable for a machine with dedicated graphics. Connectivity is where the Thin 15 quietly shines. You get a full-size RJ45 Ethernet port, a HDMI 2.1 output, 2 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 ports, a USB-A 3.2 Gen 2, a microSD slot, and even a headphone/mic combo. I hooked it up to a 144Hz external monitor for a workstation-style dual-screen setup, and the Thunderbolt ports handled both video and data without a hitch. The Ethernet port saved me during a LAN party when Wi-Fi was spotty, and the HDMI output let me mirror the screen on a TV without any scaling issues. Who should consider this laptop? If you're a college student or a young professional who wants to game on the side without lugging around a 6 kg desktop, this is a solid middle ground. The thin profile and decent battery life make it practical for a day at class, then you can pop it into a dorm corner for a few hours of Call of Duty. It also works well for content creators who need GPU acceleration for video rendering but still value portability. The RTX 4050 can handle most modern games at 1080p high settings, and the 13th Gen i7 offers enough headroom for multitasking with Adobe Suite or programming environments. On the flip side, the laptop isn't for anyone who expects a full-blown desktop replacement. If you're chasing ultra-high refresh 240Hz or 4K gaming at max settings, you'll hit the RTX 4050's ceiling quickly. The thermal envelope, while respectable, will throttle under prolonged 4K sessions, and you'll hear the fans spin louder than you might like. Also, if you're a minimalist who prefers a sub-13-inch screen for ultralight travel, the 15.6-inch chassis feels a bit large to slip into a small backpack. Lastly, power-hungry users should be ready to stay near an outlet because the battery will be a limiting factor during long gaming marathons. One practical strength that often gets overlooked is the keyboard's tactile feel. The keys have a satisfying travel distance, and the blue backlight adds a subtle cue for nighttime typing. I used it for a week of coding assignments, and the keyboard never felt mushy, a common complaint on cheaper gaming laptops. The other side of the coin is the lack of an RGB zone. If you're after a full-spectrum lighting display, you'll need to look elsewhere or add an external keyboard. Another nuance is the storage configuration. The MSI Thin 15 ships with a single M.2 NVMe slot, which is fast, but you can't expand it without opening the chassis. If you anticipate needing a massive library of games or large 4K video files, you should opt for